Hi, this is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy, and I'm here today with Giorgia Montella from here and there Ancestry Tours in Italy. So welcome, Giorgia. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Hi, and thank you for inviting me.
No, that's great. So it looks like you have a nice sunny day there today in Salerno.
It is, absolutely. After many days of rain, we finally have a nice sunny day.
Oh, that's good. We have rain here today, so.
Nice, nice background.
And that's not my backyard, as you probably know.
Will be so nice.
So the first thing I want to ask you is a little bit about your background. So you live in Salerno now, yes?
Yes, I was born in Naples and grew up in Naples, but it's about 20 years that I'm living here, southern Salerno. To be accurate, I live about 50 kilometers southern Salerno in the area called Cilento, one of the so-called unknown places of my region, the Campania.
So that's interesting. I didn't know you were from Naples originally. That's where my paternal grandparents are from.
Yeah.
And my grandmother lived on Via Carbonara.
Mhm.
And my grandfather lived in Vico Longo, I guess around the back of Carbonara.
Yeah, in the center of the city.
Yeah, and you know, when we went there 25 years ago, I didn't know anything. I don't know half of what I know now. Um, but I didn't know that when we were at the train station, that my grandparents lived about a half a mile from the train station, and I had no idea. So I missed the boat on that. So was your family originally from Naples, or did they come from someplace else?
No, they are original from Naples. All my relatives are original from Naples, and we always have been there. Even though now, right now, my sister are, spread out through the country because one lives in Sardinia, the island, the other lives in Rome, but we are from Naples.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm dying to get back there again and just roam the town and see the places where my grandparents lived and grew up and my my grandmother's family was originally, I mean, they were in Naples because they were nobility, and that's what I learned. I didn't know that at the beginning, that all the nobility, that's where they lived. They lived in Naples. They didn't live where they were from. They lived in Naples, and they would go visit the countryside or wherever they had their farms or tree or whatever they made their money from. Once or twice a year, and that was pretty surprising to me. And the other thing that was surprising was that the nobility didn't pay taxes.
I'm not surprised to hear that.
No, but growing up in America, everybody paid taxes. It didn't matter. But I mean, it's sad, but they lived off the people, and that's thankfully it's much different now, so that's good.
What's the next, Lexi?
Yeah, yeah. So that kind of brings us to what you do, and you do ancestry tours, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I've been a tour leader for more than 20 years, basically in my region. So it's like these things came to me because it happened that some of my clients actually asked me to help them to learn more about their Italian origins. Because before that, I had no idea about this unknown word. For me, it was an unknown word. But when I helped them to find more about their Italian ancestors, I found out that I really liked that. I enjoyed that experience to see the emotion on their face, even tears in the moments they could, meet for the first time their relatives, like, distant cousins or something, and going together to visit the ancient churches and to get birth certificates and even going to visit the graves when we were lucky of their ancestors. And you know what? The emotion that they brought out from deep down for what I saw was the gratitude. Because they were there in these little villages in front of these graves or these ancient houses, and they, for the first time, realized about how much they lucky had been thanks to the sacrifice of their ancestors to get a better life in the end. So,
Yeah, and that's certainly what we hear from everybody. And I know there are deep emotions. I mean, even when we went the first time, even though I didn't go to ancestral homes because I didn't know. Actually, I was supposed to go to where my mom comes from in Torito, and I was supposed to meet my cousin there. And there was a plane crash going across the Atlantic, and he chickened out, so he never got there. Um, but my uncle didn't leave there until he was in his 30s and had his whole family. When my grandparents came, my mom's family, they left my uncle there at 2 years old, and his whole family was born there. And the house is still there. They actually owned a house back then. Uh, and my great grandfather, I guess he was the town milkman, he owned a cow and would go door to door with the cow, and people would get their milk.
nice. Very nice.
That's funny, right? Um, but so you must have some very interesting stories about what people saw or found. I mean, is there anything that kind of stands out, that whether it was good emotions or something that somebody found out that was just amazing?
It's true, absolutely, it's true. And that's why I would like to keep helping people to do that, just because it's something that involves even their own families, like son and grandkids all together. So it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So my wife thinks I'm crazy because I want to go to the cemeteries. But what do people, what do they feel when what do they relate to you when they go to a cemetery and find a grandfather or great grandmother or something like that?
We start in two phases of the trip. Before they come here with our genealogies and with the help of the village administrations, we search for all the info we can find about the family, getting started so the info that our visitors give us. Once we have good info, we look for the graves if our visitors want to do that. Sometimes we are lucky, not every time. But when we are lucky, we can go there and visit the graves. Of course, it depends. Sometimes they are great grandfathers, sometimes they are great parents. It depends on the single situation.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
even the churches, because at ancient times, sometimes birth certificates were kept in the churches. So we search for the priest help for doing that, and they usually are very available to help us. So that's important.
Yeah, and that's one of the toughest things, when you're here in America and you're trying to do research. We're kind of constrained by what we find on the Antenati, and the church records aren't filmed, and I know a lot of people, they try and make contact with the churches from here, but that's very, very difficult. So, uh, you know, for people listening who want to get to churches or want to use your service, how do you go about getting into the churches and contacting the priests? I know some of them don't even have phones, right? The churches.
We go there, we get start because we have, a kind of collaboration with the administrations. Basically, the difficult that our visitors have to come here and to learn more is that these little villages are not easy to be reached because there are no trains, and besides that, the inhabitants don't speak English. Mostly they don't speak English. So they don't know how to do that. But we are here on the place. So we go there, we talk to the priest, we talk to the measure. So for us, it's easier to get all this info. But I understand that for them overseas, it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible. That's why when they have relatives on the place, they can do that. But they overnight in Capri or in Sorrento or in the Amalfi Coast, and they spend one day, if they're lucky, in these little villages. With us, they have the possibility of spending more time directly on the village of their origins because we plan all the tourist activities, we plan the visit to the churches or to the graves, whatever they want, so they really can live fully the experience of their ancestral village.
Yeah, and that's great. So, what advice would you have for people who are, thinking about making a trip to Italy? Back 50, 60 years ago, people went to Rome and they went to Florence and they went to Milan and they went to places like that, which is great, and you see amazing things there, but you don't make that connection. So, what would you tell people the difference is between doing a tourist trip and actually connecting back?
There are probably two Italies, like I say Italy, the so-called triangle, which is Rome, Florence, and Venice, the so-called tourist places. But the real authentic Italy is very different. If you want to know the real Italy, you necessarily have to visit these places. So my tip for them is, yes, of course, visit Rome, visit Naples, because Naples is already a different situation, a different atmosphere. Naples is one of the few tourist places where still the Italians live. If you go to Venice, in the center, there are only tourists. If you visit Naples, you can find Neapolitan people. But after that, just stay in the village of your ancestors, because here you can find the ancient, works. You can find what is your idea of Italy, because I know that there is an expectation about Italy, and you can live that in these little villages. Of course, it's a little harder because for the reasons I've been describing before earlier, uh, we help to fix these problems. The language, to reach there, to live more, the tourist experience.
Yeah, and I sent you the one video where we did the thing about Italians and Italian Americans.
Yes.
I mean, especially when I was growing up, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, whatever. We lived, or at least my grandparents. We were surrounded by Italians. We had, my grandparents were Italian. They weren't American. They were Italian. My mom and dad were born here. Some of my aunts and uncles were born in Italy. So it was kind of a blend. It was kind of a mix. Now if I say I'm Italian, of course I know I'm not. I'm American. But people, some people say, "Hey, you're not Italian. Italians are," and now they didn't even want to. They don't even say Italian American, right? So, what do you see as the difference between Italians and Italian Americans? Because it's always fun to explore that.
Yeah. One of the funny things I noticed, dialoguing with my clients is that, for example, they are sure that even some kind of food are Italian. But when they ask me, oh, this is Italian style, I have no idea about what it is. And it's very funny, and we learn each other. And there are many differences, I think. I think it's that here, U.S. is the most, multicultural country in the world. So Italian Americans is a mix of different cultures. Even the Italian culture, of course, but not just Italian culture. Here we are Italians, and we are not so patriotic like Italian Americans are. This is one of the things I noticed over the years. Italians don't feel, the homeland the way Italian Americans and Americans feel.
So, so when you say that, is that because you're still tied to one of the 20 regions? I mean, is that still? I mean, like we have our states here, right? But it doesn't matter if you're from New York or California. We have our differences and things like that. But again, we're still Americans. I get the sense that in Italy, if you're from Calabria, you're Calabrian first, and
Yeah.
then Italian.
Because a very important aspect, actually, you're completely right. First of all, maybe in the last years a little less, but there is this, fight between northern Italians and southern Italians, and we feel the difference from the regions. Even the food. One of the first things I say to my clients is that it's like we had 20 different gastronomies according to the single region. But it's much more than this. It's not about just the food. It's about our culture because it depends on our history. And it's true. What you said is completely true.
And the dialects are all different. I guess that's starting to change. But again, growing up, my father was, his family was from Naples, so he spoke what I think, was probably a purer version of Italian, especially since, how his parents grew up. And my mom spoke Barese. And they used to fight all the time.
You said that with a typical Apulia accent when you said that is. It's the way they talk. Very, very nice.
That's probably the only thing I say right.
Yes, it's true. And you know what? I understand better English than a Northern dialect. When I work with Italians from Northern Italy and they speak dialect with me, I don't understand the word. But when
Really?
really, I understand much better English. Yeah.
Well, that's very funny, and that's the one thing about the ballets is that, and I've learned this later, is that everything was kind of chopped. All the words were kind of they chopped everything up. You know, like when we would say Aunt Rachel, Zia Raquel, it would be Z Raquel. It was kind of all strung together, and all the vowels were chopped off the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's really funny that you understand English and you understand the North.
But it happens to every Italian because our dialects are very different from each other. And you know what? Even inside my region and your ancestor region, the Campania, if you change the province of a city, you don't understand the dialect. Maybe it's easier than a northern dialect, but you have difficult to understand, even though you change city.
And that must have been, if you go back hundreds of years, that must have been. I guess that's part of the reason why Italy never unified, because they were so different in so many ways, whether it was the culture or the language or what the food maybe, and I know believe me, I tell Americans that there's no such thing as chicken parmesan in Italy, and they don't get it.
I know. For us, it's a sacrilege. Can I say that? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I had asked somebody one time. I said, "What's the big difference in the way you eat?" And she said, "You eat everything at the same time. Where we have different courses. We have the pasta course and we have the meat course." And
For us, it's not possible to put everything in the same plate. We need the first course, second dish, with the side dish together, and the dessert, the coffee, the liquor. Yeah, for us, it's important to do things like that.
And you see, I grew up like that in my grandmother's house because, especially on holidays, it was like that. They would have the antipasta, and we would have the pasta dish, and then they would bring meat, and
Especially in these holiday um, special occasions with the family, where probably our grandmother made the homemade pasta or the baked cake. These are important things for us to enjoy together the moment. It's not just about the food; it's something that go over the food for us.
yeah, it's like it was like an event more than just a meal.
You probably have heard about the so-called festivals dedicated to one single food, especially in the countryside of Campania. For instance, in Pestum, the area, the town where I live, we have the Artichoke Festival in May. So we have this special occasion where this food, the artichoke, is celebrated, and you can have the artichoke in every possible way. And this recalls people from all over the region because they know them. So it's a special occasion to enjoy together the food and the company.
Yeah, when we were in Sorrento, it was I think was it Saint Stephen? It was the table of Saint Stephen, and they were setting up during the day, and I said to somebody, what's happening? And they said, oh, it's the table of, I think it was Saint Stephen, and but it's just food. You won't like it. I said, no, that'll be fun to have. What I didn't know at the time was that you had to purchase these tickets, and it was all kind of homemade food, and you had to purchase tickets and go over. Well, I had no idea that there was just going to be a mad rush for these food tables.
Yeah. So, many times we have the local singer, the fires, to celebrate the moment. So it's nice.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about Naples too, especially since you're from there. Um, what's a Neapolitan like? What is their mindset, if you will?
After politics,
No. The if they're not their politics, but their how do they think? How do you know? What makes somebody from Naples different from somebody in a different region, or Rome, or
in many, many, many ways. Let me tell you about one aspect that is very meaningful about how Naples people think. You know, Regardless about our faith, usually we think that after death might be the hell or the heaven, depending on our life. But for Neapolitan guys, we have the sequence, which is the purgatory. We have the worship, the cult of purgatory, which is very important in the city. In fact, we have even a church celebrating that. We think that, we got to build our happiness after death with the purgatory. Because we usually, Napolitan guys are not completely bad, not completely good, but they try to do better. So that's the reason why the purgatory for us is an important meaning. After that, if we are still here, we pray for these souls which are maybe trapped into the purgatory to get high and to reach the paradise. And because we are always in the middle. Even the famous Pulcinella, the mask, I think that you have been hearing about Pulcinella because your ancestors are from Naples, was in the middle. He was naive, but a little mean. He was poor, with money, but rich in the spirit. He was in the middle. So we try to survive. We try to be in the middle and to go to better, to make our life better. This is the typical way to live of Napolitan guys, in my opinion.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I grew up Catholic, so purgatory was big when I was a little kid.
Yeah,
The nuns would beat it into you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And how about food? Because I've been trying to find like a really cookbook about Naples, but most of the cookbooks that are written here are in English, and they're not. Some of them aren't even written by Italians. But what's the most popular or staple, whether it's sit down food or street food?
I think that there are many. The ragu is for sure one of these typical dishes that set on the table. If you're asking me about the street food, for sure the pizza, which is not the pizza you have at table, but it's what we call pizzetta, a little piece of pizza that you can have walking. And together with that, the panzarotto, with potatoes, or of course the typical cuoco. Have you ever heard about cuoco?
No.
Cuoco is a Naples word, which means paper cup. So you have this fried fish, squids, anchovies in this paper cup. And you can have that walking down the street, and that's very typical. And of course, we can't forget the cakes, the famous babà, or the sfogliatella, or the pastiera. These three are the most popular. The pastiera is the Easter cake, very good. The sfogliatella with ricotta cream, ricotta cheese, and cinnamon is very good, and it's probably the most popular, not only in Naples, but even down the Amalfi Coast.
Yeah, that was my dad's favorite.
I believe that. Yeah.
That was his favorite. I don't know if my grandmother was making it uh, from scratch. I do have a recipe of hers, which I don't know. I don't know if it's an original from Naples or not. Uh, and I don't recall ever eating it, but supposedly it was my father's favorite.
They are still fighting because in Naples they say that it was created in Naples. Down the Amalfi Coast, in a town called Coca dei Marini, they say no. Here, the sfogliatella was created, so nobody knows the truth.
Nobody knows where it really came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the recipe that my grandmother had was it was like she would take veal and put a little ham in it, a little cheese in it, roll it up. But rather than being a tomato sauce, um, it was made with a big pile of onions, and you just let it cook down and cook down and cook down for hours.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the ragu. Yes, of course. Yes.
Yeah, and again, I've never heard anybody make this before. Again, I don't know if it was something that she brought from there, something that she learned from somebody over here or not. But it's an interesting dish. I'm sure I don't make it as good as she made it, but I try.
I remember that my mom, every single Sunday of my life, woke up very early to make the ragu because, as you said, it needs to be cooked from the milk. And the color is almost black for the long cooking. Almost black. It's very, interesting. And it smells all over the rooms.
I know. Yeah, again, I grew up with that in mostly when I went to my grandmother's house. Either one, it didn't matter which side, whether it was my mother's family or my father's family. There was always on Sunday. There was always the pot of sauce and the meatballs and and
Yeah.
I don't know if you know the big fight in America over gravy versus sauce. I don't know if you ever heard that.
I don't know actually, because usually my clients don't know the ragu.
Yeah, well, here, if you know, I grew up with saying gravy, right? Gravy meat because they would put the meat and they put the meatballs in the sauce and it would cook and cook and cook. Um, some people get very upset. They say gravy is for like roast beef or chicken, not for not not tomato sauce. So there's
Oh, no, it's just the sauce, and even the pork. It's important for our ragu, for our, yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, it's interesting that we have this. Some people get very very upset about it, which is really 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 crazy if you ask me. Um, so 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 if anybody wants to get in touch with you, where can they find you? I'm sure you have. I know you have a website and you're on Facebook. So why don't you tell us how people could get in touch with you?
That we are very happy to help them to reconnect with their Italian word. And there is a word, unexpected word, more than they might think. It's not simply a simple trip. It's an experience that can change their life forever, taking them the memory of this trip forever in their heart. We are there. They can reach out by Facebook page when we have even some videos about our ancestors, our website, and they are available for for taking about that.
Okay, and I'll put all that information out there so people can find it and get in touch with you. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you taking the time. It's fun to make the trip, like we said, to Rome and to places like that. But if you really want to go home, you want to go back to the village, and if you're crazy like me, you want to go to the cemetery.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
All right. Well, thanks again.
Thank you so much, Bob. Thank you so much for this opportunity.